Well, appreciate you guys being here to give us the history of the Central and South America world sector. And we've got Dr. Jaime Deando with us.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he's been around a long time.
For
Knows all this stuff.
For a while.
For a while. We have Otto Neves with us from Sao Paulo, leading the church there, and Pedro Garcia, Mexico City, built that great church. And you guys have some awesome stories to tell us. So why don't you just jump in? Jaime, you want to start?
Yeah, let me start. Let's see. My wife Mimi and I were baptized in Boston. This was back in 1982. I was a graduate student at MIT, and we already had 2 of our kids. We have 5 now. And we were met there on campus. We studied there on campus. We were baptized there, and for about 3 years, we were asked to kind of start up and sort of lead a Spanish ministry in the church. Now, most of the time, we really didn't know what we were doing. We were not full-time in the ministry. And but I remember the first meeting we had was in the basement of the Boston Opera House. And nobody knew the songs. I mean, we had all been converted in English, so we didn't even know the Spanish equivalents for a lot of the words that we use in English for discipling or for all these kind of things. So it was kind of an awkward meeting there. But the group grew, and we were picked by Phil and Donna, about 1986, I guess, about 1986, to go with them on the Mexico City mission team. Now, when we went there was 13 of us on the team. It was a team of 13 people. Only 5 of us spoke Spanish fluently. Maybe 2 of them spoke half-half. And I was employed to work at one of the universities in Mexico City. And so for a few months I worked and I helped with the church planting. I remember the first time we met was in the penthouse of the building, of a hotel building that we used for about 2 years to meet there. It was called the Hotel Diplomático, which means diplomatic hotel. We used to call it the Hotel Problemático, which means problematic hotel. And they were good to us. We met actually we met in the penthouse of that hotel the first time. We had 13 of us. We had about 10 visitors that Sunday. 3 of them were a camera crew that was filming the service. So it was kind of like funny. I was leading the songs because I was the only one that knew them actually. Had a lot more hair back then than I do now. And it was fun. You know, Phil and Donna build the team on the whole concept of family. We spent a lot of time together. We spent, morning meetings, late night prayer times. We played dominoes. We played basketball. There was a lot of things that we did. And Phil and Donna always cultivated that kind of family atmosphere. We could talk to each other about anything, everything we felt. And of course, the first few months of the mission planting were full of challenges. I mean,
sickness.
Yeah, a lot of sicknesses. Especially the single guys spent a lot of time sick. And we got ripped off by the lawyer who was doing all of our rental for houses. Some of our clothes got stolen at the laundromat. Yeah. We had to, deal with a lot of the. I mean, even though I'm Latin, my father's Mexican, my mother's Puerto Rican. I grew up in Puerto Rico. Nevertheless, you still have to adapt to a new culture, a new place. So it was still, interesting, and had a lot of interesting experiences. Most of the guys who were learning Spanish, they of course were challenged to go out and talk with people in the street. And so we have a lot of jokes about what they learn. Like for example, one of the guys was trying to invite someone to the first service of the church, and in Spanish you say, servicio. But he ended up inviting this guy to the first cerveza, which is a beer. And another sister was at a restaurant one time and wanted to ask for a glass for her water, and she asked for a beso instead of a vaso. Beso is a kiss. So the waiter was very excited that this gringo woman was asking him for a kiss, and lots of things like that happened. Phil and Donna really try to focus us on a few things. One of them was he wanted us from the first moment, the moment we got off the plane, he wanted us to be focused on evangelists. You go out there, you are here not to adapt, not to, get acclimated, not to learn the culture. You're here to evangelize this city. Of course, previous, denominational efforts and, of course, the Church of Christ efforts in the past had been focused on getting the missionaries to adapt and to go through this period of cultural adaptation. And Phil and Donna said, forget it. You'll get adapted. Just keep your focus. The other thing we had was a lot of dreams, especially of raising up national leaders. We all knew that we would only be there for a while, for a short while, just to plant the seed, get the church's foundation built. And then someday our dream and what we felt would be the glory of the mission would be to raise up young Mexican men and women that someday would lead the church, not only in Mexico City, but in Guadalajara, Monterrey, Puebla. And it's one of the most exciting things to see now is that really in all the 4 churches in Mexico, really except for Peter and Laura Garcia who lead the church in Mexico City, all of the leadership is national. They were all converted, trained in Mexico, and to us now, 10 years later, that is a source of great joy and in a good sense of the word of pride, to see that happen. And the other dream we had, of course, was to someday go and plant, churches on our own. For myself, I can share with myself a little bit. As I said, when I got to Mexico, I was working full-time at a university as a research scientist. And actually, I remember one Saturday morning, very early in the morning, it was a cold day in Mexico City. There was snow in the mountains. And because of my schedule, Phil and I had our discipleship times Saturday mornings, and we're meeting at this restaurant. And a couple months before that, Kip McKean had been in Mexico City to visit us, and he had talked to me about dreaming of someday becoming an evangelist. And the way I looked at it was, okay, so I'll finish out my commitment to the university for 2 years, and hopefully then I can go into the full-time ministry. About a month after that, I'm meeting with Phil for breakfast at this restaurant, and the first thing he says is, well, I'd like for you to, leave your profession and go into the full-time ministry. And I was excited. I said, hey, great, Kip just talked to me about that 2 months ago, and of course, when I finished my commitment, and Phil said, no, I'm not talking 2 years down the road, I'm talking right now. Mm-hmm. I need you right now. I want to train you. I want you to, become an evangelist. And so it was really interesting. It was quite a joyride. I remember organizing, my first project was to organize the first and actually only Latin American Missions Conference. And we had already started churches in Sao Paulo, Brazil, Mexico City, and Buenos Aires, Argentina. And so we organized this big conference. I'm out there. I remember the first evening, we had people coming down from the States, of course from all our different sponsoring churches in the States. We had a group come from Brazil. We had a group come from Buenos Aires. We had already probably about maybe 40 people in the church in Mexico City. And we're meeting at this hotel in downtown Mexico, right? And even though I had told the lady at the hotel, we're a pretty noisy group, we're pretty dynamic. We make a lot of noise here. For some reason, the hotel had the bright idea of scheduling a chamber orchestra concert in the room next to ours. And to make a long story short, they were really upset. They kept coming in our room saying, can you keep it quiet? And of course, keeping a bunch of Mexicans quiet is quite a chore, quite a task. But anyway, that was the first project I had. About 2 years later, my wife Mimi and I were appointed evangelist and women's ministry leader. And we took off with our family, packed them all into one car. At the time we had 4 children, and we all took off on a 9-hour drive to the city of Guadalajara, which is the second largest city in Mexico. And we started the church there. We got that going. That same year we started Monterrey, Puebla, the other 2 major leading cities in Mexico. And we were there only a year, actually. We got that church started. We really enjoyed it. It was a great time. But then we were asked to go to San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is where we grew up, both my wife and I. And it was quite an interesting opportunity, because one of the things that we all talked about sometimes was for people to go back to their countries to start the church there. And here I was, getting the chance of the lifetime to go back. And so we went back, got that church started, and about 10 months into the planting, we were asked to come back to Mexico at the time for me to become the World Sector Administrator for the Central and South American sector, which at the time included churches in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Mexico, and of course Puerto Rico. And we were about getting ready, actually Pete was already in Mexico, getting ready to start the church in Bogota, Colombia. And so for the past 6 years, I've been serving as a World Sector Administrator. Maybe at this time, maybe we can have Pete talk a little bit about what it was like to go to Brazil, and Alton can share a little bit about the planting in Rio de Janeiro, and this would be our second generation plantings in South America. And so maybe we can have them talk a little bit now about what they had.
Well, I remember very specifically when we left Boston, church in Boston, Laura and I, we had been married in December of '89, and we left Boston in May, 5 months later, to start the church in Rio. But first we went to Sao Paulo for about, I think, 7 or 8 months to train and learn Portuguese. And it was quite a shock for us, just the culture, because I knew a little bit of Spanish, but Portuguese was something, totally new. And it was always my dream to be a missionary, but it was reality to go and be there, and the culture shock and everything. But it was, to me, it was something that changed me, and had a big impact to understand what it means. And so we were there, and then John and Barbara Porter, who led the church in Sao Paulo at the time, gave us the charge to go start the church in Rio de Janeiro. And it was quite an experience when Alton and his wife Gabriela came with Laura and I to start the church in Rio. And it was quite an experience even in the beginning. For me, it was an experience that I'll never forget.
I'm sorry. We forgot to unhook the phone.
It's the phone.
Since we had a little break, while you're doing this, why don't you go back and give your history?
Is there
Family.
Oh, from way back?
Yeah.
Roger, do you know Keith Bennett?
Nope.
You have the wrong room.
How big was Sao Paulo when you left to Rio?
600 members.
600 members?
Yeah, 600 members.
At Jaú, Alameda Jaú, no? They were there.
I'm going to go back, so we'll edit. That's
Should
Roger
we-
wanted me to do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Should we take that off the hook, or
Will it make a noise if we take it off the hook? Or
it
is
might?
a silent way?
You know what? And those other guys make calls, so probably better.
That's okay.
Wrong
We can,
Yeah, we can always. Wrong number.
we can stop a little bit now.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay.
So let
Yeah,
me
just
talk
sort of
about
give a
his
little-
little bit of it.
little of your heritage, and where your family coming from Cuba, and where you grew up, and becoming a Christian, and
Yeah.
connect yourself with Kip Mullane and stuff.
Well, my first contact with, I guess, Kip McKean was when I was 12 years old. And he was going out with my sister Elena. And I'll never forget it, because even then he had a tremendous impact on my life, even at that age. Kip was in charge of the youth ministry, or even, I'd say, before the pre-teen ministry in the church in Crossroads in Gainesville. And Lena and him began going steady at that time. And my parents went out of town one summer, and because I had nothing to do and they wanted to keep me out of trouble, Elaine and Carmen, who were members of the church in Crossroads, would take me to church on Sunday and Wednesday night. And I was very young, but I was very, very impacted by what I saw, in their lives, particularly the love and their devotion. And I believe it made a tremendous impact. And I remember, going to Sunday school with Kip there was about 10 of us there, and I just appreciated his love for me, even though he was easing in on my sister at that time. But I really appreciated him. I looked up to him as a big brother, even at that time. And there was a desire in my heart, even to get close to God, to get my life right with God, because I saw something really different and special in their lives, just how committed and devoted they were, how much they really wanted to do what's right. And I didn't see that in my family. But my parents came back from the trip and were furious. This was a time when my parents were not very happy with Elena and Carmen Bentley now. They were going to the church, and that they had been converted from Catholicism into disciples. And so they were furious. They told Elena and Carmen what were they trying to do, and so it was interesting. I was prohibited from going to church with them again, even though in my heart I really wanted to get baptized, get my life right with God. And so it kind of cut me off. But it was always a time I remembered, that was what true Christianity is supposed to be. And so years went on, and Kip and Lena had got married and moved out to Chicago. Carmen and Martin had moved to Tampa. And my life had gotten pretty complicated at that time. Just a lot of things, drugs and things. But I'd always looked up to them and respected them for, I idealized what they stood for and what they lived. So it stuck with me even when I was making decisions about where to go to school in college. And I made a decision to move to Tampa, even though we lived 4 or 5 blocks from University of Florida, because I wanted to be close to Carmen and Martin to become a disciple, become a Christian. And I knew I needed to get out of Gainesville. It was a very bad environment for me, and moved there. And a month and a half later, after I moved there and started going to school at University of South Florida, I made a decision to be a disciple. And it was all because of the years of example that I saw in them. Kip and Elena, their family, their marriage. And I was not very open for many years, but it stuck with me that there was no arguing with the truth in their lives and what they were doing. So little by little, it just convicted me. It made me see this is where I needed to go. And from there, I was in school for 2.5 years, and after I graduated, I moved to Boston and to be with Kip and Elaine. And also, it was a dream of mine to be a missionary in Latin America, because I'd always wanted to go back to my roots. My family moved to the United States from Cuba in 1959, and I was born in the United States in 1963. And it was always a desire of mine to go back to Latin America. I couldn't necessarily go back to Cuba, but to live in Latin America even before I was a Christian. It was amazing to see how God worked it all out. So I moved to Boston with that intent to train, to go in the ministry, and to be a missionary. And moved to Boston. It was quite an experience. Moved to the center of Boston. It was inner city, and it was quite an experience for me, being from a small town. But it was really a life-changing time for me too, because I saw even where I needed to grow and change and commit myself even more as a disciple. Because in one of these outer churches like in Tampa, we made attempts at being disciples, but we saw how we needed to change a lot. And Boston at that time in 1987 was a time where a lot of people were moving in from outside, and we needed it, because Boston was the only church at that time where all the members were committed to doing what's right. Even in the church in Tampa, where I was from, it was a half and half membership. Half of the membership wanted to be committed disciples and go absolutely by what the Bible says, and half really weren't interested. They were just basically religious people that wanted to go to church on Sunday, but that was the limit. So when you saw that out there, it was very drawing. I appreciated it, but I saw I needed to change a lot. We were in Boston for about 2.5 years, 3 years, and I met my wife Laura there in Boston. We were married in 1989, and Kip and Elena had invited us over to their house one evening to celebrate my birthday, and they'd share with us about the dream to go to Latin America, and I eagerly desired. We were in the full-time ministry, both of us. We were leading the teams, and it was very special. But it was always a dream, and 3 years later, God realized that dream, and they talked to us about going to Brazil to begin the church in Rio de Janeiro. And we were sent out in May after we were named evangelist and women's ministry leader. In January, we were sent out in May to go to Brazil to learn Portuguese, and it was quite an experience for us. Laura spoke no Portuguese, no Spanish, no. I think she was 100% American, and it was a bigger challenge for her than me. I had a spirit of adventure. It was my dream to go to Latin America, but I appreciated her, just her willingness, her heart to do that. And so we went there. We trained for about 8 months learning the language, and then we given the charge to start the church in Rio de Janeiro. And for me, there was a lot of intimidation about Rio because it is a very, very intense place morally. It was, to me, I always saw they have a statue of Christ with his arms extended, but it was our conviction that Satan was sitting on his shoulders of that Christ statue, because it was an incredibly immoral place, worldwide, reputation for being so immoral. So we knew we had our hands full, and Alton and Gabriela came with us on that, and I really appreciate our friendship and our the bond that we had. Especially, it was a very interesting mission. We had quite a few interesting experiences.
Exactly. We tried for the first time. We tried to start the church with a large group of 36 from São Paulo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we ended up in a lot of troubles.
Right.
Starting to fix their lives and finding jobs, and was quite a challenge for all of us. I remember the first service, the Gloria Hotel.
Wow. Yeah, I remember it very well. It was probably one of the worst services that I can remember that I was in charge of. It was a complete and utter failure for me. I felt very scared. I was very intimidated, and it was very humbling. But it was amazing to see, even through that tough time, the disciples, especially Alton and Gabriela, their support of Laura and I, especially me, even being so full of fear and insecurity. I really feel like it was special. It pulled me on through their absolute and unconditional loyalty, and that was amazing. After I repented, to see how God worked. And
yeah, it was tremendous. We moved to Copacabana Beach. We started meeting at the Miramar Hotel.
Right.
And we baptized right across the street.
On the beach. Right?
On the beach.
On the beach.
Yeah.
And we baptized Christiani.
Yeah.
The first baptism.
Right. I
It was
remember that.
tremendous. And also, I think one of the great gift that God gave us was Joca,
Yeah.
which we worked together, and
Best friend.
he led 4 years later, he led the church to Belo Horizonte.
Yeah.
This guy was an old friend of mine from 10 years ago. I was a teenager when I met him. He moved to Rio to study to be a dentist, and we met there. I met him again 10 years later and he became a Christian. And so
That's
it
great.
was tremendous. God leading the way, and we had a great 7 months.
It was a tremendous time for me and Laura. And even during that time we were in the church in Rio, Phil and Donna had called us to have a conversation. And we went on a trip, Phil and John Porter and Andrew G. and Barbara and Jaime. And we went on a trip to different cities in South America. We went to Bogota, Colombia, and there was no churches there at this time. We went to Lima, Peru. We went to La Paz, Bolivia. We went to Santiago de Chile,
Yeah.
and there was no churches, and it was a dream trip to have dreams and to see one day there would be a church there. And then it was that time on that trip, Phil and Donna had asked us to lead the church to Bogota, Colombia. Our plan originally was to stay in Rio for a while, but it was amazing to see how God worked. And so a couple of months later, we were moved to Mexico to learn Spanish. We were fluent in Portuguese, and then it was kind of tricky for my wife because she felt really like she had Portuguese. And then we went to Mexico City to learn Spanish, which is enough to be complicated. There's enough difference. And so we moved to Mexico City, and after 6 months of being there, we started the church, Laura and I, with Flavio and Renee Marie, who lead the church there now, the church in Bogota, Colombia. And to me, it was one of the most heartfelt missions and times because we really saw God work. And
You guys got there at a really, really difficult time.
I remember when
'Cause I know the only time
Mhm.
that I've spoken to your parents was one time when your mother called me in Mexico City. You guys were already in Colombia. And there had been these severe, water shortages and power outages, and nobody could get through. And that's the only time I talked to your mother was she called to Mexico City to ask where her son was. What's happening out there?
Yeah,
It was a rough start.
we began a church. There was 11 of us, and we went there with a little bit of money in our pocket, and with the hope that we were going to Jaime was going to wire the rest to us. And during that week, the phone company, which is a government operated, went on strike for about 10 days. So we couldn't get any money for 10 days. So it was a wild time. They had electricity shortages for about 8 to 9 hours a day. They wouldn't have any electricity.
Mhm.
And this was in the capital city of Bogota. And it was an intense challenge, but we saw it as, an opportunity. People would, have nothing to do at night because it was dark and there was no electricity. So it was very easy to have them over to have a Bible talk and study the Bible with them. And particularly, I remember a young man that I studied the Bible with there in the beginning, the first few months, who was involved in one of the drug cartels.
Right.
And he was, responsible. It was a very, very, intense life he led. He was responsible for somewhere around the lines of 300 deaths. If he didn't kill them, he sent them to their death. He was one of the bodyguards for one of the cartels there. He tried to break away. He was studying at the university there in Bogota. And, it was just intense to go through a darkness study with him because all this stuff came out. And it really, it made me see this is what it's all about. This is what we're about. What we're trying to do is save sinners, people who just have no hope. And he felt so guilty about his life, and he'd hardened his heart so much. But then it was amazing. A few years later, he died of cancer. He was a young man, 26 years old. He died of cancer. And,
Faithful.
Faithful as a disciple. And it was very encouraging. The first 6 months that we were there in Bogota, there was only 2 people that fell away. About 70 people had been converted at that time. So that was a special base that a lot of the people that were converted at the beginning are still faithful today.
That's great.
And then after that, we moved to Mexico City. Phil and Donna were moving to Miami. And Jaime and Mimi and we were asked to move to Mexico City to take over the work there.
Didn't we tell that one brother's story in Upside Down Magazine?
Yes.
That brother died.
Yeah.
Right, right. You know, and even at that time when he was converted, he had to use an alias.
Got an alias.
Yeah.
When he was first
That's right.
converted, because it was still, he had people following and watching.
Hmm.
One of his old bosses came to church
Yeah.
one Sunday secretly. We didn't even know he was there.
Wow.
They knew all along
Yeah.
where he was.
Yeah.
God protected the church.
Yeah.
But I guess they figured that he was for real, so they never.
Yeah.
The danger was that they would think that he was trying to kind of sneak out, kind of blow a lot of information about
Right.
the cartel. But
Right.
we
It was
found out later
amazing.
on that he was being followed around.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was amazing. You know, even at that time, there was bombs going off in the city, incredible violence, and it still goes on to this day. But it's amazing to see God works and the Christians can be focused. And
How big is that church now?
they're approaching 700 disciples now. Flavia and Renee are East Colombian. She was on the original team in Mexico City.
And her parents are the Reinbolds.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Richard
maybe
and Karen Reinbold.
we can backtrack a little bit, because remember one of the things that we talked about, was one of our dreams was for everybody to at one point be able to go out and lead a church in Latin America. And in 1990 we had 2 of us in Guadalajara, 2 of us in Puebla, 2 of us in Sao Paulo, 2 of us in Buenos Aires, and 2 of us had started the church in, one of us who had gotten married in Argentina had started the church in Santiago, Chile. So with the exception of the Lambs and Renee, who was very young at the time, she was still in college in Mexico City, everybody was already out in the
Everybody
mission
on the
field.
original
The
team.
original team had been able, and now,
Wow.
if you think about it now, for example, this is February of 1998, one of the members returned to the States in 1991. But, after all those years, every one of us saw that dream of being able to lead a church out in Latin America. Now, the Brazilian work was begun by the New York Church. They planted Sao Paulo, Brazil in '87. Mike and Amber Tolliver planted that church. And when Kip and Elena organized the world sectors, they decided to incorporate Brazil into the Central and South American world sector. So the Tollivers went to Africa to lead the mission work there. And so that's when John and Barbara Porter, who were part of the original Mexico City team, went to lead the work in Brazil. So maybe Alton can talk a little bit about his conversion.
Yeah.
There at Uspi, right?
Yeah, it was before. It always started in 1987, Mike and Anna Brigitte. And I was studying to apply for USP for the university. I was 19 by the time, and I was looking for a friend of mine that was invited to the church, and I went there on a Wednesday night to talk to this friend that we used to go to a religious church before together. And I went there. Was after the service. I went to meet this guy, and he introduced me to Jim Brown, who studied the Bible with me, and I was really impressed with the high power kind of person that he was, and really the church, the love, the high power preaching of Mike. It was incredible. And in August I was baptized, and the church had 40 disciples by the time, and 15 missionaries came from New York. Only 2 spoke Portuguese that time. One of them was Gabriela and Denise. They both are Brazilians, and Gabriela 3 years later became my wife. So
Glad you sent her on the team.
of course,
That's right.
of course, I became a disciple and fell in love right away with her, and so I had the challenge to apply for this university in São Paulo, and so I stayed in the city working in my studies, and I got in at the university in 1988. So when the Porters came from Mexico, I was a Christian for about a year, a little bit more, and 1 year later, he asked me to drop off school and train for the ministry. So it was a big decision for me. It was a great challenge, facing my family, and I was 20 years old that time, and but it was a great joy. I really wanna grab the dream and really wanna see the Brazil being evangelized, and so John started to train Gabriela and I, and we were at university taking the charge of evangelize USP, and
What is it? Who's speaking?
USP, it's University of São Paulo.
Ah.
And we, God bless a lot. The first year we multiplied the ministry there. We started with one Bible talk back there with Jim Brown, and 2 years later we had almost 100 disciples, which was incredible. In 1990 we got married, and in March 1991 March,
Right, I remember that.
we went to Rio de Janeiro,
Right.
which was incredible. We were 3 months married, and was a tremendous experience for us. And now seeing the Rio Church, we have a little bit over 500 disciples now, and Edson and Nilda are leading the church now, who were a couple that I knew before I was a Christian also. Actually, we live in the same building in São Paulo, and we didn't know. So God had His hand since the beginning, and so in 1993, the Porters went back to Florida, and we had got back from Rio. So we took the charge of the church, and the church was a tremendous challenge for me. I was 25 years old, and here I had all those guys that were trained by John also, and so we took the charge. God bless, helped us a lot. We grew. We tripled the church in those 5 years now. So the
You
church
also
is.
sent out the church to
So in 1994, we sent out the mission team to Belo Horizonte, which is the third city in Brazil. In 95, we sent out the church to Asunción, Paraguay, which was our first international planting. And in 97, last year, we sent Salvador, Bahia, which was the first fifth generation church in our world sector. New York planned São Paulo, Boston planned New York, São Paulo, Rio, and Rio, Salvador. So we have five churches now in our geographic sector.
5 generation churches.
In 5 generations.
That's
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what's the attendance in Sao Paulo now?
Around 3,000. So that's,
And again, the same thing. You have, these 4 churches being led by Brazilians. It's part
That's
of the whole idea
Yeah.
of the initial thrust.
That's always been an inspiration to me, because when I was a young minister right out of Christian college, I was in a wealthy church in Houston,
Mhm.
and we supported the traditional church in Sao Paulo.
Mhm.
And it was always a big deal because they had gotten over 500 and, was the biggest church, I think, in the traditional church outside the U.S. at the time.
Mhm.
And so I knew those guys
Mm.
and actually tried to get them interested in the movement
Yeah.
later.
Mhm.
And they didn't want to.
Yeah.
But one of them who was on that team and started the traditional church in Sao Paulo now is managing editor for a major publication with the traditional churches.
Hmm.
And I just read in the last publication, they had a center spread. Said it's time we evangelize the mega cities of the world.
We're there.
Good. Really? Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
And now you guys got 3,000 there in Sao Paulo and have planted
Yeah.
all those other churches. It's just,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Tremendous.
That's incredible.
But to bring it a little bit up to date, the church of course, like I said, the church in Sao Paulo was initially started by the Tollivers, who are now overseeing most of the churches in Africa, doing a tremendous job there.
Yeah.
They planted a great foundation, and of course, people like Puerto and Gabi, the couple that leads the church now in Rio, Edson and Nilda,
Exactly.
a lot of really great, powerful leaders. The church in Buenos Aires, which was planted by Martin and Carmen Bentley, Carmen being Pete's sister, is now being led by Argentines, by nationals. And of course, Martin and Carmen, after about a year there, moved to Mexico and really helped us tremendously to launch the other churches in the country of Mexico. And now he serves as an elder in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And of the Mexico team, to bring it up to date, one of the members, Andrew Jambarba, was sent early on to Buenos Aires to help the church there. There he met a young sister by the name of Mariana, who ended up becoming his wife. They started the church in Santiago, Chile in 1990, then moved back later on back to Buenos Aires to lead the church there. And they are now the lead evangelist and women's ministry leader in Miami, which is kind of like our headquarter church for the sector. Another one of the couples, Bart and Becky Moyers, they got married in Mexico City. They went there on the team as a dating couple, got married there. Then later on went to lead the church in Buenos Aires briefly when the Bentleys came to Mexico. Then they came back to Mexico again and were in the ministry in Mexico. They are now in the church in Miami also. Another one of the couples, of course, the Porters, John and Barbara, also went to Mexico as a dating couple. They got married in Mexico, then went and basically built the churches in Brazil on the foundation of the Tollivers. And now they are leading the church in Tampa and discipling the churches in Florida. Another young woman who went on the team, Anna Hawkins, she helped plant the church in Puebla, and now she is married and leading with her husband, Jamie Slobotnik, the church in Memphis, Tennessee. Renee Reinbold, whose parents, Richard and Karen, were early missionaries with the Traditional Church of Christ, mainly medical missionaries. She went to Mexico as a young woman, basically a freshman in college. And she's now married to Flavio Uribe, They lead the church in Bogota, Colombia, one of our fastest growing churches. And they also planted the church in Quito, Ecuador. And they now disciple also the church in La Paz, Bolivia, and the church in Santiago, Chile. And they have really done a great job. In mentioning, I mentioned Florida, Tennessee, kind of strange. I mean, Tennessee, Florida, what do they have to do with Central and South America? Well, in 1992, we decided that we needed a base in the United States for several reasons, strategic, leadership, financial, and so the Lambs and the De Andes decided to move to Miami, and the ACES World Sector gave us the opportunity to make that a church in our world sector. And so we've lived in the Miami, the South Florida area, as they know it there, for the past 6 years. I was appointed elder in the church in Miami in 1994, together with Dan Allison, who was previously a missionary in India, went on the original mission team to Bombay, India. And it's a joy for me to share with Dan, for Mimi, my wife, and I, to share with Dan and Mary Allison the eldership in Miami. God has done great things in Latin America since. We have 19 churches in Central and South America under our world sector. And Peter and Laura took over the church in Mexico City in '92, and they've really raised up a lot of new, young leaders. They've spearheaded the mission work in Central America, which has all been done basically out of Mexico and out of the initial planting in Guatemala in 1994. And the interesting happened in 1997. We had a rearranging of the churches in different world sectors, basically as a strategic move to prepare for the mission work after the year 2000. And of course, we formed this plan to have a church in every nation with a city of at least 100,000 people by the year 2000. And after that, we plan to have a movement, a mission movement within those countries where we already have churches. So to be able to finance this whole thing, we rearranged some of the first world churches, and so our world sector was joined by several churches in the United States in 1997. In the states of Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and we had already added the churches in Florida. This is very interesting because, as some of you know, Phil and Donna are originally from the state of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So it's very exciting for them to be able to have those churches in their world sector. And probably the most exciting thing that happened last year was that Phil's parents, William and Frances Lamb, were baptized in the church in Nashville. That was one of our most exciting times. It was exhilarating, especially because Mr. Lamb had been diagnosed with cancer. And as a matter of fact, he passed away several months later. But it's exciting to know that, many people sometimes feel that, I have to be where my family is so that they will become Christians. Phil and Donna's example was, we will give everything up. We will trust God to work things out. And as it turns out, it was their example of being able to leave everything behind and go to Latin America that actually, I think, convicted Phil's parents about how serious, discipleship is, how serious our mission is, our Great Commission from Christ. And so, of course, when faced with the prospect of death, Phil's father was tremendously impacted by the love of the church in Nashville. I mean, people drove miles to go to their small, house in this farm community outside of Nashville, bringing food, doing their laundry, helping them out, and it's been a great example. I mean, of course, Phil's mother is a faithful disciple in Nashville, reaching out to her family, to people in her community. Phil's son now is studying at Belmont University in Nashville, and it's been a great year
That's
for us this past year. Talking about the plans for the future, right? We still have 5 more churches to plant before the year 2000, including a very challenging planting, which is Havana, Cuba. Of course, it has there's a big emotional tie to Miami because of all the Cuban refugees there, and of course to Pete's family, Elena and Carmen. And we have other churches we're trying to plant. I'm very excited about the work done in raising up young men and women who will probably end up leaving the States and leading these new churches. I'm very excited about that. And of course, the next big challenge is to go ahead and keep evangelizing these nations. I mean, I think people in the States are sometimes oblivious to the size of these countries. I mean, Brazil is a huge nation. I mean, it's almost the size of the United States. We've barely made a dent in it, and but we know it'll be done. Mexico is a huge country, of course, our neighbor down south. Very significant in the hearts of many disciples in the churches in the United States, because many people have family down there, of course. And Pete, I know, has some great plans for Mexico. They have raised some great people. I'm very excited. I remember the first 2 men we baptized in Mexico City. In our first official service in October of '87, we prayed. I mean, we prayed. It seemed like for months we could not get any men to come to church. We had a lot of women come out and visit. But I remember the first 2 baptisms we had there, Juan Enrique Moguel and Alejandro Zamora. They are still faithful disciples. As a matter of fact, Juan Enrique and his wife now, Sofia, they lead a super region in Mexico City. He's one of Pete's right-hand guys. And it's exciting to see this young man. He was a young student at the university back then when he was baptized, really young. And now, he's a man, a husband. He has 3 kids, right? 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Really great friend
That's
of Pete.
cool.
And really exciting to see that kind of thing
Doing
happen.
great. It's doing well.
I don't know, Pete, you want to talk about some of the plans for...
Well, it's exciting
future.
because a lot of people feel like in the year 2000 we finished the job, and it's eye-opening to see in some of these bigger countries that we are just beginning.
We're away.
There's still several cities in Mexico that have 3 million in population that we have to send churches out. And so it's exciting. There's still a lot to do, and we're looking forward to what God's going to do after the year 2000 and reaching all of these places and sending out churches. And we're very excited about this year, 1998, about completing our charge for sending a church into each one of the nations in Central America, Cuba being one of those. We'd really like to see that church go out this year.
Man, we're praying.
It will be historic.
We are praying for
For
that.
me personally, it'll be something to be a part of sending that church there to La Habana, Cuba.
It's awesome. That's awesome. And how many are coming now on Sundays in Mexico City?
We have about 4,500 people coming in on Sundays in attendance.
Which is just about the largest church we have outside the U.S.
Yeah, it's one of
You and Manila are
Manila, right?
about the same. That's fantastic.
We're excited.
I was really excited about your campus ministry too. And how many students do you have?
Well, it was when we went originally to go to Mexico City. It's one of the biggest cities in the world, and with that came, campuses that are some of the biggest in the world. One of the ones is UNAM. That there's over 200,000 students on one campus. It's like a city in itself. They even call it University City.
What's that stand for, UNAM?
UNAM is La Universidad, the University Autónoma of Mexico.
Yeah, translate to National Autonomous University of Mexico.
So, that was our challenge too, to evangelize some of these campuses, and it's been exciting to see God work. That now there's over just about 300 disciples on that campus, and throughout Mexico City, there's a little over 700 university students that are disciples in the church. So we've got cities within cities.
Yes.
That's true.
And God's working, and it's exciting.
And you were saying that at UNAM you have students in every college?
Right. We have 20 or more students on each one of the colleges on that campus. College of Medicine, College of Law, College of Business. Each one of the colleges that they have there on that campus, we have at least 20 disciples there. So it's exciting. The job's getting done. And
You have a very young couple leading the campus sector, right?
Carlos.
Can you talk about them a minute?
yeah, Carlos and Viviana Garcia. He was a young guy that was studying, and it's been exciting to see him grow and even see his dream, because he was a campus student when he was converted, being realized. So he had a passion for university work, and he was trained right there on UNAM by Laura and myself, and it's been exciting to see him, take that dream higher and even go with it himself, to see great things. And they're just getting started in their own hearts. They feel like there's still a lot more to do. They want to see even a group of 1,000 there on the UNAM campus, which is still small in comparison to the size of the university. 1,000 disciples.
And how old are they?
He's 26 and she's 27, I believe. They're pretty young. They were just recently married.
Yeah.
And she's from Bolivia.
Right.
So
She's one of 3 sisters
yeah.
that were baptized from Bolivia.
Right. So they're a tremendous couple. We're very thankful for them, and they've done a great job. To see a second generation disciple, third generation disciple have that passion and that dream, and really see it through. It's exciting. So we know that's going to multiply even more throughout the years.
Amen.
Another great story
Mm-hmm.
is Josue Ortega.
Right.
Josue was met by Jess Asper, I believe, in Mexico City, and I think it's a great story because it should give people a lot of hope for their lives.
Mm-hmm.
As a young Christian, I remember Josue visiting us in Guadalajara. He was still in law school at the time. He was doing some research for his thesis, and he wasn't doing well spiritually. As a matter of fact, when he came back from that trip, he was open about it. He said, he wasn't doing well at all. And this was a young man then, and Phil took him under his wing and decided to work with him and give him a lot of attention and disciple him. Eventually, Josue went into the full-time ministry, was appointed evangelist, led one of the fastest growing sectors at the time in Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
We sent them later on when he got married to lead the church in Santiago, Chile for a while, and had tremendous growth. And now he's leading the church in Guatemala City, which is one of the fastest growing churches in the third world for their size, and oversees the churches in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and El Salvador, and Honduras. And they are, like I said, here's a young man who was struggling at a time. It took attention, it took discipling, it took vision for him. And he is truly one of the, he's a hero for me. I mean, he's an incredible evangelist. He and his wife Veronica are tremendous leaders. And they've raised up a lot of leaders for Central America for us.
That's been one of the
Great
joys in our work is on the mission field, is to see God's dream, reach some of these people's hearts, and then they'll go with it. It'll become their dream, and they'll have just as much passion. And even it was exciting to see a couple weeks ago Josue come to Mexico City and teach some of my leaders, and even just challenging my heart and my faith. And it's an incredible dynamic to see that some of your disciples and some of the younger disciples that were converted give you back something and help you, call you higher in your faith. So to me, it's very gratifying in what we're doing, and seeing God multiply the dream, the faith, and even to see their passion. It gives me a lot of faith that, through my lifetime and even on to the next generation, God's going to do great things.
Mhm. Yeah.
Amen. That's awesome, guys. Well, it's great the way God has used you and is going to. I really appreciate you making the point that we got a lot of work to do yet.
Oh yeah.
Right.
We're not done, and that's a big challenge we're feeling right now with KNN is to get the people excited about finishing the evangelization proclamation,
Mhm.
but getting the vision. Hey, we're not done. We got a lot
Oh,
to do
yeah.
yet. So.
Yeah, even with some of these countries and these people, they in no way, shape, or form are going to be satisfied when we reach every nation in the year 2000. In the U.S. perspective, people will be very happy, but in these countries like Mexico, they have family members in some of these other cities, major cities, and they want to see that dream
Right.
realized
So
too.
they're
They want to
churches,
do it. So for them, it's just beginning.
What's the population of Mexico now?
It's estimated over 20 million. And once you get over that,
Mexico City.
Mexico City.
Right.
The whole country, I'd say, close to 90 million.
90 million, yeah. And Brazil?
Brazil, 160 million people living there.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah, big countries.
We are in 4 states now. We have 27 states. So we just begin.
Yeah.
We're just beginning.
Right. And how many
So-
states do you have left?
There's 12 states.
We got 3 under the Mexico City is kind of like Washington D.C. It's like a separate district.
Yeah.
Among the states of the republic.
And there's 12 other states? And you have churches in
4
4.
of those
So you
states.
still have quite a bit
Yeah.
Right.
yet to do also.
Yeah.
Amen. So each country gets to replicate the movement.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
exciting.
awesome. See, those would be future great stories when you've done all the states.
Right.
Yeah.
When you've done all the cities.
Exactly.
You're looking for those hidden people back in the hills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys very much.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Roger.
Excellent.
Thanks for the
It's an
opportunity.
honor for us.
Oh, our honor. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.